After Mega Man 8 in 1996 and 1997, the classic mainline Mega Man numbered entries would take a bit of a hiatus. We technically got Mega Man in base, but originally that didn't come out worldwide until GBA a few years later. So I guess you could consider that a mainline Mega Man game if you want. The Mega Man franchise had spin-offs and sub-series getting constant re-releases, but as to our main classic Mega Man entries, there was nothing. Well, once the date turned September 22nd, 2008, that changed. Classic Mega Man was back with Mega Man 9. This game was actually pretty influential on me. Mega Man 2 was one of my first Mega Man games, and maybe even my absolute first, but so was Mega Man 9. I had it on my Xbox 360 and I used to play it a bunch even though I was pretty bad at it. Years later, when I got both Mega Man Legacy collections on Switch, I would revisit 9 and have a good time, yet still get crushed by this game's difficulty. But more on that later. What is important to note is that going in, Mega Man 9 is a game that I do have a personal connection with, and because of that, I don't think I'll be 100% unbiased. This will probably be one of those classic YouTuber tropes where I play a game from my childhood and go, wow, this isn't as good as I remember. Right? Getting into the game, we start off with peace until robots start to attack. These robots were created by Dr. Light, and people begin to have questions. Dr. Wily then volunteers to take donations to build a robot army to counter Dr. Light, while also confirming he didn't do this, which I find odd that people are just willing to donate. Like, yeah, the guy who did all this evil, he said he wouldn't be bad, so we gotta trust him and give him all of our money. Isn't there like anyone else you could give the money to? Dr. Wily also provides video evidence to prove Dr. Light is behind this, and Dr. Light gets arrested, and it's now up to Mega Man to take down these new robot masters and prove Dr. Light's innocence. And now, quick spoiler warning for the rest of the plot. Skip ahead to the time shown on screen to avoid spoilers, but this is a classic Mega Man game, so it's not really going to be ruined if you listen to the spoilers. Anyway, 3, 2, 1, let's go. After defeating enough robot masters, it's discovered that they are going to be decommissioned and sent to the junkyard soon, since apparently their expiration date had arrived. Once you defeat the final robot master, it's revealed Dr. Wily had reprogrammed those robots for this, because the robots wanted a purpose and did not want to get sent to become scrap. This is really sad when you think about it. These robots were created and given an expiration date for their death, so they could be gotten rid of once their usefulness expired. In an effort to avoid an unfair death and to have a purpose in this world, they got turned into fighting machines. They didn't want to be evil. All they wanted was to live. Dr. Wily then bursts in and steals the video you watched. You go to Dr. Wily's castle and fight some robots before fighting Dr. Wily himself. Dr. Wily pleads for mercy, and Mega Man shows him every other time this has happened. Dr. Wily tells Mega Man to follow him to Dr. Light, but Pro Man busts in to call you a fool and says how it's a fake. Yet Mega Man decides to take a risk and go for it anyway. Guess what? Proto Man was right, and Dr. Wily gets out of there, leaving the castle to be destroyed, and Proto Man saves you. Credits roll and we get where are they now for the robots, who are literally going to be killed like nothing. Just, hey look, they're happy and living now. What about the rest of the robots who this happened to? Clearly the idea of these expiration dates and these robots being sent for scrap is just normal, and except in this universe, there's probably hundreds of other robots this has happened to, and only these 8 are saved. Does this happen in the future? Do they learn their lesson about how to not put these expiration dates, otherwise these robots will turn to crime to survive? There's so many questions I have. Overall, I enjoyed this plot. I think it provides some depth and interesting character motivations by having the robots just want to live. It evolves as the game goes on, and while it does do the whole, look, Dr. Wily was the villain twist, it does the twist in a much more interesting way. Mega Man 9's plot adds to the game without taking away from it. They didn't need to add more depth and background to the robots, but they went the extra mile and that makes it appreciated. There's a bit of tragedy behind the robot masters, and while I still don't feel sad fighting them, it does at least make it a little tragic. They didn't want to become killing machines. They just wanted a purpose. Speaking of the robot masters, how are their designs? Well, their designs are excellent. Mega Man 9's robot masters designs are all unique and interesting to look at. I'd say Magma Man's theme and design is the least creative in the entire game, but still a neat take on the whole fire robot master trope. Another neat touch is we finally get a female robot master with Splash Woman. I like how they went with a mermaid design this time instead of a diver or someone with water tanks. Of course, those other designs are great too, but Splash Woman's design is also cool. Fun fact, Hornet Man was nearly Honey Woman. I don't see why we couldn't have gotten 2 female robot masters. There is no reason to limit it to just one, though the original Honey Woman design would later be used as Vesper Woman in the Mega Man comics. While the Mega Man series for the most part has always done a great job with unique and interesting character designs, Mega Man 9 stands out above most other games in the series with its character designs. When I think of Robot Master lineups, this is one of the first ones I think of. Finally though, we can get into the game. Staring at the screen, you may notice that yes, this game is indeed 8-bit. Mega Man 9 was early into the retro throwback era where every company was going back and doing 8-bit styled or inspired games on digital storefronts. In particular, this one is themed like Mega Man 2. I do wish they had maybe tried to do Mega Man 8 styled sprites, but I think the 8-bit themed sprite work of Mega Man 9 is also well done and colorful. Areas are given life to them and have some detail, setting each stage apart from previous entries in the franchise. While plenty of the tropes of these stages are present in other entries, they're given a unique twist and spin here with the design of areas in Mega Man 9. However, it's not just the graphics that are inspired by Mega Man 2, the gameplay is also heavily inspired and taken from Mega Man 2. No more slide or charge shot, and you now pick 8 Robot Masters and go through that, no splitting them up via a mid-stage. This is usually one of the heaviest points of contention with Mega Man 9, and it is incredibly clear why. Is Mega Man 9 really a good sequel if all it does is throw the franchise back to Mega Man 2? Depending on who you'll ask, you'll get various answers, and while this is also a review, a main focus of this video will be focused on answering that. Is Mega Man 9 a good sequel that helps to push forward Mega Man? Well, first we need to establish what makes a good sequel, and there is no better place to look than Mega Man 9's inspiration, Mega Man 2. A good sequel looks to the original game, and does it better. Every factor of the game is improved in some area in the perfect sequel, but a good sequel at least increases the quality of the main attributes of the previous game. So, Mega Man 9 isn't a good sequel then, right? I mean, it must be a clear answer. It goes back to 8-bit graphics and strips out gameplay mechanics. Therefore, it isn't an improvement, but instead, a regression. Except, I disagree with that. Yes, the graphics are downgraded and gameplay mechanics are removed, but Mega Man 9 takes what is left and perfects it. Mega Man 8 on a surface level offers more. It has better graphics more inside its gameplay, but Mega Man 9 is a tighter experience, and the best way I can get that across is by diving into the Robot Master levels. Let's start off with the first stage I go through whenever I play Mega Man 9, Galaxy Man. This stage features a lot of spikes. Normally I wouldn't be a big fan of spikes, but Galaxy Man and other Mega Man 9 levels use spikes as a guiding tool mostly, while other times using them as an obstacle. The spikes don't feel completely cheap. Early on, the spikes are testing your platforming and getting used to the tighter jumps Mega Man 9 will require. So while it might feel unfair at first, like why is the game testing me so hard with these jumps by using spikes, I feel it's a good way to get the player used to having to do these tighter jumps, since Mega Man 9 is kind of demanding. Yeah, Mega Man 9 isn't exactly an easy game. If I were to make a chart of the difficulty of classic Mega Man games, it would be mostly a downward trend, which isn't a bad thing by the way. I am fine with that, and the easier Mega Man games were still a lot of fun to play through and had their own difficult moments. Mega Man 9, however, breaks that difficulty trend. Mega Man games have a reputation of difficulty, and Mega Man 9 lives up to that very much. Precise jumps and properly using your weapons are a must here unless you're already pretty great at Mega Man. And if you're somehow able to complete this game with using just the Mega Buster, my hat's off to you, because I cannot do that. I am nowhere close to skilled enough. I personally welcome this harder difficulty, but I understand that it may be off-putting to some people. Mega Man 9 for the most part does actually do a good job of keeping things fair. The game is demanding, and it can be crushing when you get a game over late into the stage, but it doesn't usually feel like the game's fault. Instead, it feels like my fault. Maybe I didn't time my jump properly, or maybe I didn't react fast enough to an incoming enemy, or maybe I just flat out didn't calculate a jump properly at all. It's not perfect, of course, but it does a good job. Getting back to Galaxy Man's stage, you have these robots that grab you. Before this playthrough, I wasn't a fan of these robots. I found them to be just a dumb gimmick, but now, they're alright. I don't like how it feels like you have to make sure that you're pressing on the D-pad to survive, since there isn't much of an indicator that you'll need any extra momentum for a jump, but besides that, they're neat. I enjoy how they act as a test of reaction timing for both when they grab you and before they grab you. If you get grabbed, time your jumps properly. Hey, do you want to restore your health? Well, make sure you pay attention and move out of the way quickly enough to avoid being grabbed first. If you pay close enough attention to the environment, you'll remember you saw a wall of spikes in the opposite direction. There's a wall of spikes in front of you, so you'll hopefully think to pay attention and be careful in this segment due to your previous encounters with enemies that grab you. If not, you die, but if you do pay attention, you now have more health. Congrats. Another clever usage of these enemies is for making you be more aware even in flatter areas where you're mostly just walking. Without these enemies, it would be just a bit of a calmer and quieter screen with not much going on. You'd get a break from being challenged, and while the screen isn't challenging with the enemy there, it does mean you pay a bit more attention besides running forward and not caring to think. How about these pink teleporters that carry and give momentum? Well, first you're introduced in a flat area and you get the basic concept down. Then you see them again, but now with 2 pairs in an instant death pit below you. Then the level ends off with a segment combining these teleporters with multiple pairs, a bottomless pit, and enemies. Nearly everything you did in the stage is put to the test. You're using your knowledge of these teleporters to do tighter segments that aren't platforming, but do require your knowledge of Mega Man's momentum, while having to fight enemies that you first saw at the beginning of the stage. As generic as this to say that gimmicks should be introduced in a safe place, and then tested in scenarios increasing with difficulty, it's just straight up good design and a well done introduction of sorts to Mega Man 9. It familiarizes you with Mega Man 9 being harder without being too demanding. Boss is nothing special, just avoid the black hole and know when to shoot. Moving on to Jewel Man stage, the game mixes in a mini-boss here. This mini-boss has rocks falling from the ceiling before stunning you if you don't jump on time. If this was a Mega Man game with a slide, I would just use my slide to move out of the way easily without much thought. But that's not an option here. Instead, I have to try and keep track of myself while keeping track of the rocks too, and make sure I'll have enough time to run out of the way. It's not a huge deal at first, but the more I think about it, the more interesting it became to me. Going into this game, I saw the slide as a natural extension of your moveset and a necessity, but I never stopped to consider how I use it. Obviously I use it to get under obstacles, but the slide has also always acted as an easy way to maneuver myself. Whenever I make an error while trying to dodge an enemy, if I slide quickly enough I can correct myself. The slide acts as a safety net for me. I use it to save myself from making errors and taking damage. With that safety net removed, I need to be more careful and cautious. I need to try harder and pay attention more to enemy patterns. If I don't think quickly enough about my movement, I'll get hit, but I can't think too quickly now since I don't have a move to get myself out of trouble. I, of course, prefer having the slide still. I think it can lead to interesting gameplay situations when designed around the mechanic of the player being able to get into smaller and tighter spaces. However, I don't need the slide as much as I thought I did originally. Without the slide, I found myself learning to tighten my jumps and be more careful. I needed to adapt. Once I adapted, I found myself having an even better time with Mega Man 9. Jewel Man stage also throws a swing type mechanic at you. Rock back and forth to build momentum. I quite like this mechanic. It's nothing huge, it's mostly just introduced and thrown into harder scenarios, but it's unique. Most Mega Man gimmicks I feel are either combat or platforming focused. I'd say while its swing type mechanic is platforming focused, its incorporation of momentum is genius. When you have to use it to make tight jumps, it can feel really tense. You have to carefully measure the distance between each platform, and then consider the strength of your own jump. You aren't really just mindlessly jumping or stopping every few seconds. Plug Man stage is fascinating to me. So you have the disappearing block gimmick. Not surprised, it's a series tradition, but the game throws in a new mechanic of these Mega Mans. Your first encounter is odd and brief. Not bad, just weird. You pass by and briefly see a clone of you. It creates a moment where you're like, huh, that was odd, I wonder what they'll do with that. After that though, the moments it's used in again are pretty mundane and mostly just, oh wow, quick enemy encounter where the enemy looks like you. It's not awful, but it feels like a wasted gimmick. The level's main focus is on the floating blocks and doing tighter jumps, and I do heavily enjoy that since it feels like the game gets to really test your platforming and put that center stage here. It seems odd to me to introduce a gimmick like this and barely use it. Mega Man 9 is pretty smart about using gimmicks for a long enough time to make them feel properly utilized, but never overuses them. The clone gimmick feels completely underutilized and wasted here, where I almost feel like you didn't need to throw it in. Tornado Man stage is the next one I do after Plug Man, and I love this stage. It's actually one that takes me the longest and challenges me the most, but I adore it. The purpose of this stage is all on tight jumps using these spinny things. You need to jump each time properly and pay attention on which side you're aiming for. Landing on the proper side will make future jumps a lot easier. Tornado Man stage also represents one of the best aspects of Mega Man 9's stage design, variety and balance. While the spinny gimmick is the main focus and aspect of the level, there's more to the level than that. Platforming is thrown in here where you fight against the rain. Later on, this is combined with the spinny gimmick, and the combination of the two gimmicks is brilliant. It doesn't just test your skill in one gimmick, it tests your skill with both gimmicks. Sections that are more combat focused also exist and are a good reminder of another one of Mega Man 9's strengths. These segments were solid times where I got to use the dual satellite weapon to deflect attacks, and it felt like I was actually using Robot Master weapons outside of Robot Master fights. Instead of being tools for bosses, these weapons felt transformed into tools for taking on the stages and the bosses. The other main examples of this are actually outside the stage, but I'll mention them anyway here. Mainly in the Wily Castle stages, you're using Concrete Man's weapon for platforming, whether it be building platforms or turning fire to concrete. Or how about using Splash Woman's weapon to break certain types of blocks? Sometimes the usage of weapons outside Robot Masters isn't great in Mega Man games, so it's a nice surprise to see Mega Man 9 carefully interweave the weapons into being useful in the levels. I dove into such great depth with those stages because I think it sets the stage for how great Mega Man 9's level design is. I could go on and do the other remaining stages, but I think by now you get the point and that just starts to repeat myself. The stages and level design of Mega Man 9 are great, even the Wily stages, which I normally have problems with. There's a careful balance of platforming, combat, and mastering gimmicks. How are the boss fights though? Well, the boss fights are incredibly intense and enjoyable. Some of them go down like nothing, but other boss fights can provide a challenge and force you to think about how you're using your weapons. At worst, the bosses are just decent. At best, I'm having a great time. That could even summarize Mega Man 9 as a whole, honestly. At its worst, Mega Man 9 is just decent, but it's rarely at its worst. Most of the time, Mega Man 9 is delivering some of the most brilliant and tightly designed levels in a 2D platformer, while offering well-executed gimmicks. Mega Man 9 is a marvelous addition to the franchise, and stands as more than just Mega Man 2 again, like I sometimes hear. So, is Mega Man 9 a good sequel then? Does it prove to be worthwhile? Does it push the franchise forward? Well, if you haven't been listening to the last over 3,222 words, yes. Mega Man 9 is a good sequel. A great sequel, even. On the surface level, it seems inferior by going back to the basics, but Mega Man 9 injects plenty of its own fresh level gimmicks and ideas to the formula. While I do like having the slide and charge shot in other games, Mega Man 9 builds a Mega Man game that doesn't need them, and proves they aren't essential to building a great post-Mega Man 2 game. Once you get into the groove of this game, you don't think of how you missed the slide and charge shot. You just play the game. Mega Man 9 does more interesting and brilliant level design without the slide and charge shot than most Mega Man games did with it. An evolution of a series does not need to keep every single mechanic ever, and sometimes it's better to cut out mechanics, and Mega Man 9 proves that. The slide and charge shot would eventually return, but Mega Man 9 decided to throw them out, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Having less mechanics is not inherently bad if the game is designed around that, and Mega Man 9 is designed around a basic toolset, which is genius. Mega Man 9 proves that sometimes less is more. Now that I've gone and absolutely gushed about the level design and mechanics of Mega Man 9, I want to quickly celebrate another major accomplishment of Mega Man 9, the soundtrack. What an absolutely killer soundtrack. I love this soundtrack. So many of the songs here are S-tier Mega Man songs to me. Okay, obviously I don't have time to play every song in full length, but here are some quick clips of some highlights. Isn't that soundtrack just insane? It brings this level of charm out, a sense of euphoria even. The songs bop. The instruments and rhythm are on point. It gives the sense of thrill and action to every stage, while not being too intense. It's just so fantastic, I love it. So that was Mega Man 9. A fantastic time that has worked its way into becoming one of my favorite games ever made. I adore so much of this game. Going into this, I expected it to think it doesn't do a great job as a sequel, and that perhaps this wasn't as strong of a game as I originally thought, but I was wrong. I was completely wrong. I love this game more than ever now, and really dissecting it gave me a new appreciation. Mega Man 9 challenges and pushes you to go further. Most deaths feel like my fault, and because of that, I feel motivated to learn and improve. However, I know that the higher difficulty of this game may be extremely threatening to some people, so I want to offer my tips and bits of advice for those of you watching. First, make sure to use that shop. especially when you get to the Wily stages. Make sure you stock up on extra lives beforehand. As obvious as that sounds, some people forget to do this. Second, you're going to need to make sure you're comfortable doing tight jumps. A jump might seem impossible, but really you just have to be precise. Third, don't be afraid to use save states or the checkpoint saves of Legacy Collection 2. If you use them, that doesn't make you a bad player who is breaking the game to an unfair degree. They're there for a reason. And most importantly, my final tip. Do not make this your first Mega Man game. Start with Mega Man 11. 9 is, in my opinion, one of the hardest of the classic Mega Man games, so the higher difficulty might put you off at first, but being more familiar with classic Mega Man can help you. That's really all I have to say, or at least all the important stuff. I could talk about the unlockable stuff, or the side content, or DLC, but really I'd be mostly repeating myself, and I think this video's already gone on for long enough. Mega Man 9 is excellent. A masterpiece in so many ways. It pushes the classic Mega Man formula. While it isn't a complete reinvention, it's a huge step forward for the design of these games and bringing them back to feeling more focused. This is by far the tightest the Mega Man formula felt up to this point. I highly recommend Mega Man 9. But that's all for now. I'm Fuse, signing out. See ya.